Hey guys, welcome to the Babbling Pastor podcast. I am Michael, and this is
Rob.
okay. I was wondering how you were going to spend that. I didn't know if you were going to go Roberto or you're going to go some Italian. I don't know, but Rob's good. I like that.
No, yeah,
Keep
I just made that up, actually.
you just made your whole name up. Okay, so this sort of series episodes that we're doing are just one big one. If you're watching this at the very end where this just premieres, but if you're watching little clips here, what we're going to be talking about this time around is passing. I think the wording you used was passing the baton on to the next generation as far as faith and whatnot. It's very Mike Todd of you, by the way, to use that terminology. Passing the baton on. How do you feel about that connection between you and Mike?
Oh, I feel like now that you've said that, I'm gonna be a success.
Yes, with crazy
because
faith.
I was getting ready to say because of my crazy faith.
Okay.
In myself,
Yeah.
let's not pretend like that was crazy faith in God. But
Now, hey, before we get any further into it, I am doing my next one is on Stephen Furtick, and he had a book called Sun Stand Still, and it's also very similar to Crazy Faith in regards to that. Like, so it's interesting that like sort of the parallels between the two of them. But anyway, between Crazy Faith and Sun Stand Still Faith, I think you're going to be able to pass that baton on, right? So to the next generation. So as we get into it, we're not just talking about like specifically passing the baton on in regards to pastoral leadership, though we will get to that. I like what you were talking about before we pushed record, which is this is just in general. This is passing faith on to your kids or passing faith on through the church or, and then obviously pastoral ministry as well. So where do you want to start on that? Because I think obviously this is a huge topic and we're going to have to break it down into little chunks. And each of these chunks is going to be a little bit different in application. I mean, obviously the way you pass down, pastoral leadership it's not the same way you would, pass down faith in your children and whatnot. So.
yeah, well, I mean, I think the principle begins because God has His own children, and He has given us His word as just a brief example, right? This is a way that He is passing Himself to us, revealing who He is to us in the first place. So I mean, you could go there. You could also begin to point to what you were alluding to, which is that Deuteronomy 6 is kind of the classic text for that, right? Where God is calling basically parents to train up their children in the way that they should go according to the scriptures, right? Raising them in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, and passing the baton of Him, passing Him essentially along to the next generation, and all throughout you see Israel. I was just reading. I forget where I was reading. I'm reading in so many places at once. It's a problem, but but I was reading just the other day, and they it was in Joshua. And they were crossing over the Jordan on dry land, right? And as they crossed over the Jordan on dry land, He has them, God has them put the 12 stones, right? The 12 big stones up as a remembrance. And specifically, it says that the purpose of this is so that when your children ask in ages to come, pretty much, right? Hey, what are these stones all about? It's a reminder of me. And so it really begins there. I think we begin this kind of subject or journey by just acknowledging that this is simply how God has created things. Because there are new humans arriving, they have to learn how to do everything, right? We're potty training. We're
That's a
teaching
fun
them.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's been a while, so I mean, I don't remember much about all of those things,
You you
except it's over, and
you
I'm
don't you
glad
don't
it's
remember
over.
the times where there's a small child yelling from the bathroom, "Somebody wipe my butt." You don't remember that conversation, those moments of
Well,
trauma for you.
um, it no, maybe
Okay,
maybe I just blocked it out.
it's
Maybe that's what
possible.
happened. That yeah,
Okay,
could be.
so
Uh,
so let's.
every I actually my lack of memory of that is giving lots of young people hope right now. So
Yeah, they're like,
um,
"Oh, I don't have to
yeah.
remember this."
So someday it will be so far away that I won't even remember it. Praise God. Um,
Reminds me of that country song. You're gonna miss this. You're gonna want this. Let's start there. I like starting there. So let's start with the passing on thing. So I think that's important. That passage that you're talking about in regards to laying up the stones, like obviously not in the same way, much more in a figurative sense, but this idea of having moments where your kids having something that will have it to where your kids will ask, "Hey, what does this mean?" or "What is this thing that happened?" And you're able to look back and pass it on. And I think that goes back to a number of different things. I know we've talked about it on the podcast before, where we've talked about making sure your kids know your testimony, or they know that dad or mom wasn't always like this, and there was a moment in your life where it changed, and those are those sort of figurative things. And if you don't have those, right, so there's a reason that God said, "Hey, put these stones up," so when they do ask, you'll be able to tell them, because history is typically lost to younger generations unless it's purposefully passed on. I mean, there's a lot of cultures that are very purposeful in reminding the younger generation of things that they weren't there for the purpose of preserving that culture and sort of the ongoing, um, just the richness and understanding of what's come before them and the treasuring of that. And if you don't have that, um, you don't really have roots, and then you just do whatever you want to do and you don't learn from the past. And so let's talk about that. Like, what are, I guess, some things. I'm going to pick your brain as a pastor for a second. So, as a pastor, what are some of those things you would encourage your congregation typically to do? Maybe just through your preaching to have those moments, right? Because I mean, if we're going to, if we're saying, "Hey, you need to disciple up your kids, you need to teach your kids
mm,
well," what would be those moments where you'd be like, "All right, so maybe like in your life, build in sort of this repetition in order to facilitate that, perhaps."
hmm. That's actually really easy answer, and it's because we talk about it a lot around here, and that's family worship. um,
There you go.
the most regular, repetitious thing that any dad can do to lead his family spiritually, or single mom, or however life has worked that out at the moment, right, for you. The best thing that you can do is family worship. And I think that that's intimidating to a lot of people, which is a hindrance. Um, because honestly, we live in an
Well,
age where a lot of people don't even really understand how to do personal devotions
yeah.
very well. And so when you think about, oh my gosh, leading other people, even if it's just your family, that's really intimidating. But that's the first and like that's the number one
So
answer right
unpack
there.
that for a second, though, because there's some people that are probably from tradition. I mean, when we grew up, I don't know if we necessarily heard that terminology a lot. So unpack that for
Hmm.
somebody to real quick, real short sort of explanation. What even is that if they don't know what that is?
Yeah. So uh, family worship is it might seem more familiar if I use terms like family devotions
Okay, yeah.
or family Bible reading or something like that. But the reason that I use that terminology intentionally is because that's really what it is. Um, you you in the instance I'm talking about, you are leading your family in a a worship service, for lack of a, I mean, at the foundation of that, that's what's happening. Even if it's not, it doesn't have to be formal, right? It's not like you have to uh, dress up and like
You come in a
it
clerical robe at like 7 o'clock at
right,
night.
yeah, coming in a
Everyone, take
clerical
your
robe,
seats.
yeah, and recite the sparkle whatever it is. Um, the
Sparkle
I
Creed.
can't,
He's talking about the Sparkle
yeah,
Creed. Everyone, it's a
yeah, the satanic sparkle creed. Um, and So it's not like it has to be that formal. It can be whatever fits your family the best, right? And I think a couple of things that really work against modern families today is first of all what we just mentioned, and that's that a lot of people don't really even know how to do their own devotions, and that includes the men of the home who have this responsibility, which is really not a good thing. Right? Like you do have to understand what it means to have your own time with God and how important that is. And if you're not doing that, then you're not going to have your children could maybe lead you at some point in family worship. I mean, it's really not, you're not in a place that, that doesn't abdicate the responsibility though. And that's the problem. Right, the scriptures clearly put the responsibility of leading your family spiritually on you men, and so that means that if you're clueless today about all of this, it means that just Google it today, and then tomorrow morning, or tonight, or at lunch today, or whatever, um, get your Bible on your phone and spend some time in the Word and pray. And it really isn't rocket science.
No,
It's
yeah.
really not as intimidating as it is so often to us.
Yeah.
And then family worship really isn't any different. We actually had we talked about worship in general in Sunday school here a while for like 12 weeks or something, um, uh, not too long ago, and one of those weeks was family worship. It was all about that, and um, the I brought in several different little books and stuff that to use as examples for that. And I know we have one of our elders does he just reads a chapter out of the Bible and then prays. Like it's not like he comes up with a sermon or um or gets a guitar and sings
Leads it out,
songs,
yeah. Starts playing
um
Hillsong, yeah.
um yeah, so we would have just maybe there should be a course. Maybe there should be a course.
There you go, see?
or,
You're
or
like,
or
"I don't
maybe
know."
a short bulleted list of what not to do.
See,
But
it sounds simple until I start throwing some wrenches into your situation, and you're like, "Ah, no, that's not what I meant." Yeah.
but if I think we get intimidated because we think that that by leading family worship we have to have all the answers just in case. Like we should be some sort of authoritative something or other on the Bible, like a Bible scholar of some sort. Like I should probably know what the Greek word behind this is before but that's not the case. I mean, at the end of the day, all you're doing the exact same thing as when you say, "Hey, son, don't do that."
Yeah.
That's all you're doing.
Mhm.
It really is all that you're doing. So,
Well, I think part of
um,
that is the good part of that is in not knowing it all is that you learn, not only do you learn together, but they can watch you learn it too. Like, so as you're doing it, be like, hey, I don't know, I gotta look that up, and then even maybe walking them through the process of that.
yeah, yeah, and so there's if this is something that like you're listening to this and you're going, you know what? Yeah, I know you're right, but there's actually a book that is that I would suggest right now, that I think is one of the best things that I've found. Period. When it comes to family worship stuff, especially when it comes to getting your feet wet with it, um, and it's called Family Worship Bible Guide. That's the name of the book. It
Pretty self-explanatory
comes.
title.
Yeah, Joel Beakey, I think, is the actual author. Um, all it is, I don't have a copy right here. I would show you because I gave it away this past week actually to somebody who used it. And so it all it is every single chapter in the Bible, of every book of the Bible, there's like a short paragraph or two that are kind of bullet pointed talking points from every single chapter in the Bible. So there's a little short paragraph with like a question, a thought-provoking question or discussion question kind of a thing at the end of that. And there might be one of those, there might be up to like 3 of those for each chapter in all of the Bible. And so it can't get more basic and helpful than that. As far as it would be nothing for you as a the parent leading this to read a chapter in the Bible and then read that paragraph, and there's your discussion. You know, you know
Just
what I
all
mean?
laid out for you. Yeah. Yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
So it starts there. So that's good, right? So the idea is saying, starting at home, what's that look like to pass it on? And then I think we move into, and maybe tell me, maybe if your mind goes in a different direction, but for me, I think it goes into a very much of like a Titus 2 sort of idea. This idea of, all right, so we're obviously the family is doing this. Then obviously, if we move up to the next level of the church and church interaction and all of that, we have very much of a sort of a Titus 2 sort of structure set up. So now you have older women teaching younger women, older men being examples for younger men, and those relationships not necessarily being family relationships, but just church family relationships. So now you have maybe those that don't have that home structure, you now that are in church or have never seen that sort of structure before, that are in church, that are maybe new Christians, or just Christians in general that need discipled. You have that structure set up that Paul gives Titus rather, where he's like, all right, so this is what it looks like. This is why it's here. And the whole purpose, I mean, we won't get into Titus 2, but you can go read it. And the idea of them saying the reason that this is set up in such a way is so that the gospel isn't reviled, so that Christ is exalted, right? So you have older women teaching the younger women, hey, I've done this before. You don't want to do this. Or the older men, telling the younger men about self-control and the importance of that and what that looks like and the implications of that. And then you have sort of the for lack of a better term, I'm going to laugh every time I say it, but the baton being passed on in regards to life experiences and, living that out and what that looks like to be, be changed by the gospel. And I think that's just a really neglected, it's really short. It's a very short chapter amongst all of this. It's so short, but it's very much applicable to say, like, hey, do you want, what does it look like for the church to come around one side of one another, to lead one another in very specific areas of their life?